Hey Ceramics 2 students, it's Mrs. New here. We are back with the Stiff Slab box project. So I've gathered up a couple things here today that I'm going to need. I have all my pieces that I cut out last class. I also have a serrated rib, and that's a rib that has this kind of pointy edge around the side. I have a wooden tool, I have a sponge and some water, and I have a chunk of super soft clay that I'm going to be using today. I also grabbed a banding wheel. This is going to help me as I'm assembling my box today. So let's go ahead and see what my pieces are doing. They've been hanging out in a bag since last class, and they're looking pretty good. So now I can pick them up and handle them. They're not kind of flopping around. They're a little more leather hard. They're a little more stiff. And so what I want to do now is kind of find the bottom of my box. So for me, I know this is the top, the smallest piece. This is a side piece. So I'm going to kind of dig in here until I find the square that's going to be the bottom, and that's this one here. So I'm going to start with the bottom of my box, and of course I have my nice beveled edge all the way around. And I'm going to start there and start assembling the box today. So I'm going to set my pieces aside, grab my banding wheel. Make sure your banding wheel's clean. You might want to put a little paper towel or a piece of canvas down and start with your bottom. Now, as I start building, I'm going to use this water to just dip my serrated rib in. I'm not going to use a ton of slip, but I am going to score. So I like the serrated rib for this project rather than a fork. I just think it's kind of slick. It goes really fast. I do want to cross hatch a little bit as I go. And getting these first couple walls up of my box is kind of the most tricky part. So I'm going to score that all the way around, and then I'm going to find one of my walls, and I'm going to score the bottom. And this doesn't matter what shape you're doing. I'm going to score the bottom, and I'm going to score both sides. I'm not going to worry about the top quite yet. And as I've done that beveled cut, I'm going to, find a side and then just start to really kind of push this together. Now, this is a thing where if you have like a table partner, it might be nice as you get these first two walls up to have someone kind of help hold this one while you slip and score the other one. But I don't have a helper for my demo video, so I'm just gonna kind of carefully grab the next wall. And again, they're nice and leather hard. Now, if they weren't stiff enough, if you're like, well, they're too floppy and I'm struggling, you can find a blow dryer. I have a drawer that says blow dryers, and you can blow dry your slabs for just a few minutes, and that might help them get more to that leather hard state. Okay, so as I start to piece this together, I'm just going to be really careful with my my bottom piece here, and I'm kind of pushing that together, and then my sides here. So I'm going to kind of tilt this. Hopefully you can see in the video. What I'm going to do is just start to pinch this together. So I'm not putting a bunch of slip on this, and I'm not even putting a coil. I am going to do a little frosting on the inside of the box, but for the outside, I'm just trying to kind of bring that together. So before I get too much further, let's talk about the frosting. The frosting happens on the inside. So as you can see, these walls, something that will help them stay is to make a little baby coil. So I've got some really soft clay. I'm going to make a baby coil, and I call this frosting. I don't know if it's because I used to work in like a Baskin Robbins where I made cakes once upon a time in another life. But anyway, I'm going to get this nice coil really wet, and I'm just going to kind of lay in almost like I was frosting a cake, like a little bead of frosting. So I take my finger and I kind of push that in. Hopefully you can see this on the video. And I want to blend that, but I'm just kind of pushing that soft coil into this crack right here. And I want to be careful not to push too hard because I don't want to push my walls of my box apart. But I'm going to frost all my seams. So I don't want to put the third wall up quite yet because then it's harder to get my hand in there. So I've got my baby coil, I dip it in some water, kind of make it nice and goopy, and then I frost this seam. So I kind of keep my finger in there, just like a little piece of frosting. Now, the other thing that can help with your frosting is to take a wooden tool and just kind of, use that to help you sort of push that coil in there and blend. It does not have to be a very big coil, okay? It's just a little bit of clay just to give you some of that clay to help that stick together. Okay, so I frosted those three seams, so hopefully you can kind of see that. So now I'm going to work on my next wall, okay, and I'm going to kind of score as I go. And again, I'm dipping the rib tool in a little bit of water, so it's kind of creating like a little bit of slip. but I'm not putting a ton of slip on there. Now, if your slabs are super dry, you might want to put a little slip, but mine are just about right. They're just that leather hard. Okay, so now I can go ahead and do my third wall. Again, I'm really happy that I did that beveled cut because things are just clicking together so easily for me. Now, if you started putting it together and the cuts aren't quite matching up, you can still adjust that. You could get in there with your fettling knife and kind of trim things out the best you can. So I'm gonna pinch these together on the outside, like I said, and then before I get my next wall up, I'm gonna frost that seam that I just did. So nice little baby coil, dip it in some water, and it helps if this clay is kind of soft. And then while I can still get my hand in here, I'm gonna frost this part here. Now, the other thing about the box, you guys, is you're gonna enclose the whole thing. And you're like, well, Miss New, why wouldn't I leave the lid off? Don't I wanna leave the lid off? Actually, you guys, you're gonna cut your lid. So think back to Ceramics 1, if you did the cut top box project, it's very much like that. So in order to make your lid fit on really, really well, you're actually gonna enclose this whole thing, and then you're gonna cut the lid. And honestly, I might do that today, and I might even wait one more class period. We'll see. So I'm keeping going here. I'm gonna get my last wall up. And this is a pretty big box, as you can see. Now, you guys know everything will shrink in the kiln just a little bit, about 25% or so, as things dry and as they get bisque fired. So it'll be a little smaller when it comes out. So you can see this is pretty good. Now, I noticed on the top, this one is a little taller than some of these. So again, some of that I can fix with coils and some wet paintbrush and stuff, and just kind of blend that together. So if it's not totally perfect, you know, don't fear. There's some things we can do to kind of fix this, but do your best. Now notice again, I didn't put big coils on the outsides of this unless I absolutely had to, like if I had a big gap or something. I try to keep the coils on the inside. So now it's a little tricky because I've got this seam in here that I still need to frost. I've got 2 of them in there. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that really carefully. Try to stick my hand in there. Now, if your box is really small, you know, just do the best you can. Maybe you can fit a wet paintbrush or something in there. If that's all you can do, then that's all you can do. But try to blend the inside the best you can. And these baby coils, this frosting technique that I've coined, frosting, it does kind of help everything stay together and, you know, live together. So I went ahead and did those last 2 sides, and now I need to do the bottom. So I'm working kind of quickly. If I weren't on a demo video, I'd probably be going a little slower and taking more time. But I'm gonna kind of push that in there. I can kind of feel, using my wooden tool or my, you know, my wet paintbrush, I could get in there and do more detail, okay? So you're like, well, this is looking pretty good, okay? Let's look at the bottom. Okay, so this isn't too bad, but at some point you need to fix all of this too. So if you feel like your box is leather hard enough to flip it and spend a little time, again, just pinch those seams together. Don't worry about putting a bunch of slip or coils unless you really have a big gap. Just kind of bring them together. And if I'm losing a little bit of my texture mat, like, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. So I'm pushing that together and blending, but I definitely want to take a look at the bottom of this and make sure it's blended also. Okay, and now I'm ready to put the top part on. Again, I'm going to unseal and enclose the whole thing. And then either today or maybe even next class, I'll probably do one more video and show you how to cut the lid and maybe some ideas for a handle up on top. Okay, so this is going really well. There's a couple other things I want to talk about. So I'm going to wrap this up one more day. And again, think about maybe my sculptural handle. Think about cutting my lid. Do I want to do a key, or what do I want to do with the lid? When I wrap it up today, I do want to put a few wet paper towels around it. Yes, for wet paper towels today. So after it's assembled, I don't want it to get too dry. I'm going to score this top part now. I don't want it to get too dry. It's already, like, it's pretty set up. I'm feeling like it's leather hard. If it gets too much drier, then what can happen is I can have some trouble when I'm cutting the lid. All right, so here's the moment of truth. How did I do with my cutting my pieces? Ooh, it's going pretty well. Try to fit it down in there. Again, this is the spot where you might need to cheat a little bit and do little coils, but honestly, this is coming together pretty well. So just kind of spending some time going slowly. The banding wheel is really helping me because I have a lot of movement here. I can, you know, move that around and it's really helpful. So this is about as far as I'd get on day 2. What I can do now that this is all assembled, I would put a wet paper towel on it and put it back in a bag. And I can start to think about, like, what's my sculptural handle gonna be like? Am I gonna have a flower up here? Am I gonna just do, you know, what am I gonna do? And I'll talk about that on the next video. I call that the doodad, right? You kind of need this like focal point, something up here that you would grab to take your lid off. And it's kind of important, right? It's the kind of central piece of the top of your box. So we want to kind of think about it and brainstorm and really think what could look cool on your particular box, okay? So that's as far as I'd get. I would go ahead and move this off the banding wheel. I would put it back on my board and really make sure to spend some time blending and smoothing, and then some wet paper towel. So I'll go ahead and do that. I'll spray it with a little water. Put a little moisture back in your little greenhouse of your paper bag or your plastic bag, right? So I'm gonna reintroduce a little bit of moisture. I'm not gonna get it super soaking, that's good enough. And then the whole thing goes back in a bag. And these are tall, depending on how big. Mine is super tall. So do the best you can. If you happen to need a bigger bag, come see me. I have a few, but I think this will slide in nicely, okay? And then next class and next video, we'll talk about cutting the lids of these and then adding your doodad, and I'll give you some ideas for that. All right, good luck today assembling your box. Let me know if you have questions, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.